Lord be with you. And with your spirit. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus went into the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter said in reply, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus said to him in reply, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Judah. For flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my heavenly Father. And so I say to you, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of the netherworld shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise you, Lord Jesus Christ.
When Jesus went into the region of Caesarea Philippi, according to the historian of the time, a man called Josephus, was surrounded by all kinds of monuments to the various Greek and Roman gods. So I suppose as Jesus looked around and saw all these monuments, he began to wonder, is this my future? Am I just a tombstone in the future? And so it's critical he wants to know whether his campaign will go on. And he has to find out from the apostles who they think he is. And that's why he asked them, "Who do you think that I am?" And once Peter confirmed that he was the Christ, then he realized that his future was intact, that his campaign and everything that he had would be continued. And then he realizes there has to be a leader of some kind, and he selects Peter. The selection is interesting because Peter, as we know, had a very hot temper. We know that he was inclined to put his foot in his mouth from time to time and to rush in where angels fear to tread. And yet he picks Peter, despite the fact that he denied him 3 times. I suppose it means that the Lord is a Lord of second chances, that nobody is totally lost. There's always hope for everybody and anybody. And that, of course, is the history of the church also. And the moral of the story is that the Lord gives us second chances too, that we're never lost. There's always hope. And I suppose the greatest example of that is the example of St. Dismas, the thief on the cross. You know, there's a wonderful story that when Mary and Joseph were escaping Herod and they were going into Egypt, a group of bandits met them. And among them was this young man who intervened on behalf of the Holy Family, allowing them to go into Egypt. Many years later, that young man who did that would turn out to be the good thief. That's the tradition in the story. But you see, the last moment he received absolution and was granted a place to heaven. Deathbed conversions are not unusual. Probably most priests can tell you of a deathbed conversion. Al Capone was looked upon as one of the greatest, I suppose, gangsters in American history, lived in Chicago. But he and his wife used to come to Miami every winter. And she went to church every day at St. Patrick's Church in Miami. But then he took ill, so she called the rectory and asked if a priest could visit him. And this Irish priest, called Monsignor Delaney, visited him and took care of his spiritual needs. The Archdiocese of Miami refused to give him a Catholic funeral, but his body was flown back to Chicago, and he was given a traditional Catholic burial in Chicago. That's a true story because I met the priest who did that. He was 94 years old, still living at St. Patrick's in Miami. That was one of the last bed conversions. A lot of people resent that. They think that's not fair. I remember another incident back in New Jersey when Frank Sinatra and his wife Barbara were, he was giving a concert in New York. And on Sunday morning, he went to St. Patrick's Church and he received communion. Well, all hell broke loose. The very next morning, the Chancery office was bombarded with people. Why? That Frank Sinatra was allowed to receive communion. Isn't it interesting how we like to play God with other people's souls? Isn't it? We don't want God to do the things that he wants to do. We want God to act like we act. That's what we want. Isn't it sad? And it goes on all the time. We want to deny God's mercy to certain people. Very sad. So let's examine our own consciousness this morning. How do we react when God extends his mercy to various people that we consider unworthy of God's kingdom?